Welcome to America, the land of the free, the home of the bold, and occasionally, the completely unhinged. Here, freedom doesn't just mean speech or religion. It apparently also means ziplining into your own truck, bottling your breath for sale, or turning a hot tub into a sovereign nation. We're counting down 101 times Americans took freedom, so literally, it broke the sound barrier of logic. Hold on to your bald eagles because it only gets wilder from here. 1. In Colorado, a man insisted on his constitutional right to drive naked because, according to him, clothes are a government conspiracy. He was pulled over, not for speeding, but for traumatizing a family of tourists and their golden retriever. Freedom of expression? More like freedom to blind. 2. A group in Texas once tried to form their own country, again, called the Republic of Texas. They had a flag, a currency, and even fake diplomatic credentials. The only problem? No one else on Earth recognized them, not even Florida, and that says a lot. 3. In Florida, of course, a guy brought a live alligator into a convenience store as emotional support. When questioned, he simply muttered, "Emotional support gator. It's my right." Somewhere, a bald eagle shed a single tear. 4. An Arizona man sued the city for enforcing no pooping on sidewalks ordinances, claiming it violated his bodily autonomy. He represented himself in court and lost, badly. But hey, at least he stood for something, or squatted. 5. A woman in California argued in court that paying taxes was voluntary and cited YouTube videos as legal precedent. The IRS didn't laugh, but the judge reportedly had to suppress a chuckle when she called herself a sovereign unicorn. 6. A man in Missouri refused to use traffic lights, saying they were mind control devices invented by communists. He only drove when the sun was in a specific part of the sky, calling it solar navigation. When stopped by police, he claimed they were time tyrants enforcing artificial rhythm. His license was revoked. The sun, however, kept shining. 7. A guy in Michigan tried to marry his car, like full wedding dress, vows, and all. His reasoning: love is love, and the Constitution don't specify species. Somewhere, the Founding Fathers just flipped in their graves, and probably double-parked. 8. In Maine, a man legally changed his name to Captain Freedom Liberty Justice IV and demanded local police salute him during traffic stops. They didn't. They arrested him for impersonating an officer. He claimed they were impersonating Americans. 9. A woman in Nevada declared her backyard an independent freedom zone and refused to allow state inspectors onto her property. They were there to check a gas leak. She claimed they were agents of tyranny. Meanwhile, her neighbor's eyebrows were literally singed off. 10. In Delaware, a man insisted on defending his speeding ticket with a puppet he called Liberty Larry. The puppet argued on his behalf in court, squeaking legal objections in a high-pitched voice. The judge ruled against them both. Larry's closing statement: "This courtroom is a stage for tyranny." 11. In Pennsylvania, a man built a literal moat around his suburban home to defend against federal overreach. The HOA fined him for mosquito breeding. He called it biological warfare preparedness. His neighbors called it swamp cosplay. 12. A New Mexico resident refused to get a driver's license, saying, "I already have God's permission to travel." Police didn't agree. He now travels mostly by bus. Freedom, just with a transfer pass. 13. In South Dakota, someone opened a free speech ranch where visitors could pay to yell literally anything into the prairie. Yes, anything. The owner said, "This is America. You pay me, you scream. That's capitalism and freedom." He now sells merch. 14. A man in Georgia tried to register his pet raccoon as a service animal for his PTSD, post-Trump stress disorder. The raccoon bit 2 people and stole a vape pen. He blamed the government. 15. A libertarian group in Idaho rejected all building permits and built an entire compound from shipping containers. One collapsed during a barbecue. They claimed it was a small price to pay for liberty. The ribs were never recovered. 16. In Washington, a woman ran for local office promising to abolish time zones. Her platform? The sun is for everyone. Her slogan? Freedom doesn't tick. She lost, but barely. 17. A man in rural Kentucky refused to install a mailbox, saying the USPS was a deep state mind control agency. He duct taped his letters to a squirrel. The squirrel defected to UPS. Smart squirrel. 18. A guy in Utah wore a full Revolutionary War uniform to court and demanded to be tried under 1776 law. He then tried to read from the Declaration of Independence. The judge reminded him, wrong document, wrong century. 19. In Nebraska, a woman turned her entire home into a replica of the White House, complete with wax presidents and a plastic Oval Office. She charged $10 for tours and told guests, if they won't listen in D.C., I'll run things from here. The local mayor politely declined the Secretary of Snacks position. 20. A woman in Alabama kept refusing to pay parking tickets, claiming parking meters were oppressive surveillance devices. She wrapped every meter downtown in tin foil and called it an act of liberation. The city called it vandalism. 21. In Tennessee, a farmer claimed he had a divine right to launch fireworks every night at 3 a.m. because, in his words, Jesus wouldn't sleep through this level of patriotism. When police tried reasoning with him, he redirected all communication through his rooster, whom he introduced as the Minister of Internal Affairs. Negotiations didn't go well. 22. In Arizona, a man refused to display a license plate on his car because, quote, numbers are a form of enslavement. Instead, he nailed a wooden plank to his bumper that read, "Free being, do not regulate." After his 14th traffic citation, he insisted he wasn't driving. He was embarking on a metaphysical voyage on wheels. 23. A woman in West Virginia sealed off her windows with foil, dug a bunker beneath her house and swore off electricity entirely, claiming that every power outlet was a portal to socialist hell. When the fire inspector showed up, she tried to exorcise him with sage and chanting. Nobody has seen him since. 24. In Washington state, an 83-year-old grandpa challenged a red light ticket by claiming that colors are monarchic constructs. He hand-wrote a 17-page defense with a goose feather quill and submitted it in a mason jar. The judge revoked his license but encouraged him to keep writing. From home. 25. A man in Georgia wore a sandwich board that read, "Taxation is theft," and refused to pay for gas, coffee, or even daycare for his nephew. His catchphrase was, "If you want my wallet, you'll have to duel me for it." And yes, one time he brought a sword to Starbucks. 26. A school teacher in Mississippi stopped teaching American history altogether, stating, "I'm already living it. No need to repeat." Instead, he led Freedom Think circles, where students sat around a flag and invented new constitutions. One started with, "We, the pizza-loving people." 27. A woman in New York refused to fill out medical insurance forms because, as she explained to her doctor, boxes are bureaucratic sigils that summon control demons. He offered her antidepressants. She countered with a protest sign reading, "No to Big Pharma, yes to big vibes." 28. In Iowa, a farmer declared his goat a sovereign citizen of the Free Exchange Republic and printed it a passport on a paper plate. He tried to use it to get a discount at Starbucks. The barista blinked twice and said, "Is this a TikTok thing or—" 29. A man in Virginia demanded the right to bring his microwave into a movie theater, insisting that concession stands are a form of culinary oppression. When denied, he sat outside with a frozen pizza and a magnifying glass, muttering, "We all melt under tyranny." 30. A woman in Minnesota tattooed the entire Bill of Rights down her arm, across her torso, and onto her shin. Every time someone asked her to wear a mask, she'd strip down to a bikini and scream, "Clause 3, Section 1, Gretchen, read it and weep." Ironically, she had a 15% discount at the local tattoo shop. Patriotism pays in ink. 31. A man in New Mexico bottled his own breath and sold it online as Freedom Air for $10 a jar. His ad read, "Made in America, exhaled by me. Inhale liberty." And yes, people bought it. One guy swore he tasted Constitution and bacon. 32. In North Carolina, a man built a homemade customs checkpoint at the entrance to his apartment complex and started demanding delivery drivers declare all packages. When asked why, he shouted, "My porch is my embassy." Nobody signed for packages ever again. 33. In Ohio, an entrepreneur opened a coffee shop that refused to accept US dollars. His motto? Cash is tyranny, trade is truth. A latte cost either a sock, a PlayStation game, or a heartfelt confession. Business was booming. Briefly. 34. In Florida, a fisherman insisted he had the right to fish in the public fountain downtown because water is water and fish are free citizens. When officers cited him, he claimed the fish chose liberty. The only thing he caught was a fine and mild trench foot. 35. In Kansas, a man tried to legally declare his dog as co-owner of his house because she provides security against government agents through aggressive barking. He even tried adding her to the mortgage. The bank said no. The dog pouted. 36. In Alabama, someone started a religious organization called the First Church of Barbecue Liberty, where services included gospel karaoke, sermons about meat rights, and the occasional holy brisket. Instead of incense, they burned hickory. Attendance was deliciously high. 37. A cowboy in Montana organized his own tax amnesty movement, declaring that bulls don't pay taxes, so neither will I. When the IRS came knocking, he tried to gallop off into the sunset on a cow. It didn't go well. 38. In Nevada, a bartender wore a rhinestone-covered Bill of Rights on his belt and insisted he had the sovereign mixology right to deny water to any customer who questioned his cocktail creations. When someone asked for ice, he shouted, "The founders didn't freeze their whiskey." 39. In Kentucky, a group of truckers formed the United Independent Haulers of Freedom and began calling their semis mobile embassies. They stopped paying traffic tickets, claiming diplomatic immunity. One of them drove with a homemade license plate that read, "Ambassador of Hall." 40. In Illinois, a Western wear shop owner added a tyranny tax, a 10% surcharge for anyone wearing a tie, a briefcase, or what he called government vibes. If you wore a cowboy hat, you got a discount. If you wore clown pants, it was free. Because freedom, he said, should always be funny. 41. In Texas, a man built a flamethrower out of a leaf blower and a bottle of hairspray and proudly marched around his backyard yelling, "Second Amendment, baby!" His neighbors ducked behind their sheds. The fire department rolled up twice in 1 week, and when questioned, he simply stated, "The Constitution doesn't say I can't barbecue intruders." 42. A woman in Oregon insisted on homeschooling her kids using only life lessons from the Fast and the Furious franchise, claiming the public education system was a liberal trap and that her children were learning physics through nitrous. Their final exam? Street racing tricycles down a hill called Freedom Slope. 43. In North Dakota, a man refused to use deodorant because he believed body odor is a natural form of protest against conformity. When HR at his job tried to intervene, he claimed the First Amendment protected his right to smell offensively independent. 44. A group in Arizona formed a militia to protest mandatory recycling laws, claiming the government had no authority to tell them what to do with their trash. Their official motto? Landfills over legislation. Their protest included dumping their garbage on the mayor's lawn, twice. 45. In North Carolina, a man refused to pay tolls on highways, arguing that roads are a socialist invention. Instead, he drove through the grass next to toll booths, calling it Freedom Lane. He eventually got stuck in the mud, where he declared, "This is the real road to liberty." 46. In Wyoming, a woman tried to ride her horse through a Starbucks drive-thru and, when denied service, declared the location hostile to the spirit of the West. She later returned with 4 other horse riders and tried to form a freedom posse. They ordered 8 frappuccinos and 1 hay bale. 47. In Nevada, a man demanded that every restaurant he visited address him as General Freedom Defender of Snacks. He carried a plastic saber and wore a sash made of tortilla chips. When a waitress called him sir instead, he wrote a Yelp review titled, "The Tyranny of Tacos." His one-star revolution was short-lived. 48. In Mississippi, a guy brought a blow-up pool into a public library and declared it his freedom bath zone, explaining that knowledge should be soaked in, literally. When staff tried to remove him, he accused them of wet book discrimination. 49. A Florida woman refused to obey leash laws, claiming her iguana had inalienable rights to roam. When it bit someone at a park, she defended it by saying, "That's just how he expresses political disagreement." The iguana was detained. She wasn't. 50. In Nebraska, a man insisted on flying a massive inflatable bald eagle over his house at all times, powered by a generator that ran non-stop. His defense? Night or day, freedom flies. His neighborhood petitioned to rename the street to Noise Violation Lane. 51. A guy in South Carolina tattooed "My property, my rules" on his forehead and refused to acknowledge any law not written on his own homemade parchment. When asked who enforced his rules, he pointed at his cat and said, "She's the sheriff." 52. In Utah, a group of hikers refused to follow park rangers' safety guidelines, claiming freedom includes falling off cliffs. Their leader wore a helmet made of tinfoil and patriotism. He broke his arm, then came back the next week wearing a cape. 53. A man in Illinois argued in traffic court that stop signs were communist symbols of restraint and that he only yields to American instinct. When the judge asked him if that's what caused his crash into a parked ice cream truck, he replied, "It was an act of desert destiny." 54. In New Hampshire, a bar owner declared every Thursday no rules night and invited patrons to be as American as you feel. The night ended with a goat on the dance floor, a duel with water balloons, and 3 citations. One guy tipped in ammo. 55. A guy in Alaska claimed that clothes were tools of tyranny and walked around his property completely nude, even during blizzards. When neighbors complained, he responded by painting a banner that said, "Cold, yes, controlled, never," and hanging it over his snowmobile. 56. A group in Oklahoma opened a restaurant that only served raw meat and didn't allow forks. Their reasoning? Utensils are for the weak. Real Americans tear into steak like pioneers. Their Yelp reviews were unchewed. 57. A Pennsylvania woman refused to install curtains, saying she had nothing to hide, and privacy is for cowards. When someone peeped in, she yelled, "If you can't handle freedom, don't look into it." The HOA was less than thrilled. 58. In Arkansas, a man replaced all the doors in his house with American flags, saying he was done being closed off from opportunity. It was all very symbolic, until raccoons walked right in and stole his sandwich. He blamed Canada. 59. A woman in California tried to pay her property taxes in monopoly money, insisting that real value is a social construct and at least this has color. When denied, she tossed the bills in the air and screamed, "Capitalism is just cosplay anyway." 60. In Maine, a fisherman refused to register his boat because he believed the ocean was not subject to man's law. When his vessel sank due to a hole he duct-taped with a flag, he swam to shore and yelled, "The sea has tested me, and I have survived. Registration denied." 61. In Colorado, a man installed a zip line from his roof directly into his pickup truck, claiming it was his God-given right to commute with velocity. When the city cited him for unsafe structures, he screamed, mid-zip, "This is what independence sounds like," before crashing into his tailgate. 62. A Florida couple converted their garage into a freedom spa, complete with flags, bacon-scented candles, and motivational gun quotes on the walls. Their spa menu included liberty exfoliation and unconstitutional cupping. They were shut down by the health department for using moonshine as sanitizer. 63. In Michigan, a homeowner installed a full-size stop sign in his living room, complete with flashing lights and a siren, and fined family members $2 in monopoly money for not coming to a complete stop at the recliner. 64. In Kansas, a farmer set up real traffic lights on his private driveway and issued $5 speeding tickets to neighbors' golf carts, insisting he had full legislative power over his own land. 65. In Georgia, a group of BBQ enthusiasts formed a religion around smoked meat, complete with ceremonial rubs, holy brisket, and commandments like "Thou shalt not overcook ribs." They filed for tax exemption. The IRS accidentally approved it for 6 months. 66. In Louisiana, a chef opened a tax-free diner where every menu item was billed as a Patriots donation. No receipts were given, and he claimed voluntary contributions were the only valid form of taxation. 67. In Texas, someone tried to host a free speech rodeo where participants rode mechanical bulls while ranting political opinions. It ended with a concussion, a fistfight over the moon landing, and one guy yelling, "I have a right to fly off." 68. A woman in Washington refused to file taxes because math is elitist, and instead mailed the IRS a handwritten poem titled "Ode to Financial Freedom," along with 16 acorns and a drawing of her waving goodbye to capitalism. The audit is still pending. 69. In Ohio, a man started a podcast where every episode was just him reading the Constitution while firing Nerf guns into the air. He called it Founding Father ASMR. It somehow hit the top 50 in the patriotism category. 70. A guy in Tennessee replaced his Wi-Fi network with 2 tin cans and a string, calling it LibertyCom. When asked why, he said, "The internet is digital oppression. I prefer analog anarchy." His kids have since moved out. 71. In Nevada, a couple refused to buy furniture because they claimed gravity is just a suggestion and slept on suspended hammocks tied to ceiling beams. When one collapsed, they blamed the building codes for restricting aerial sovereignty. 72. A man in Idaho declared his front lawn an open carry zone for garden gnomes. He glued plastic rifles to over 50 of them and posted a sign, "Armed and decorative." Someone called the cops. The cops just laughed. 73. In Arizona, a guy protested sunscreen mandates at a workplace construction site, claiming, "If my skin wants to rebel against the sun, that's its constitutional right." He peeled for 2 weeks and declared the sun an oppressive monarch. 74. A woman in Vermont insisted on giving birth in a tent in the woods to avoid federal interference. She live-streamed it, cut her own umbilical cord with a pocket knife that said, "Don't tread on me," and named the baby Liberty Blaze. 75. In Pennsylvania, a man put wheels on his couch, called it the mobile throne of freedom, and began driving it down public roads. He was pulled over for not having seatbelts or headlights. He replied, "Kings don't need blinkers." 76. In Missouri, a family held independence drills every Saturday at 7 a.m., which included blindfolded hot dog eating, shirtless flag waving, and tactical grilling simulations. The HOA tried to stop it. The HOA failed. 77. A guy in Maine converted his shed into what he called the anti-bureaucracy embassy, complete with a flag made from expired coupons and an anthem he sang nightly with a kazoo. When city officials came to investigate, he handed them a visa application and a coupon for frozen waffles. 78. In California, someone filed a lawsuit demanding the right to not recycle, calling it state-enforced remorse for enjoying packaging. In court, he brought a display of his trash from the past year, proudly labeled Landfill Legacy. 79. In Oklahoma, a man refused to sign his own divorce papers, arguing that marriage is a spiritual contract, not a federal one. Instead, he mailed his ex-wife a copy of the Declaration of Independence with his signature under "We hold these truths." 80. A woman in Alaska built a literal throne of ice in her front yard and sat on it every day wearing only an American flag and a snow shovel. When asked what she was doing, she said, "Guarding liberty's last frontier. And my mailbox." 81. In rural Mississippi, a man launched a statewide petition to abolish all speed limits, arguing that freedom cannot be measured in miles per hour, and that every brake pedal in America was a symbol of creeping tyranny. His campaign included homemade billboards, a rap song titled "Cruisin' for Liberty," and a viral video of him doing 97 mph in a Ford Taurus wrapped in a Betsy Ross flag. 82. A woman in Oregon refused to use GPS under any circumstances, claiming satellites were tools of globalist thought steering. Instead, she navigated cross-country using a 1993 road atlas, a dream catcher, and a crystal pendulum that she swore swung toward freedom. Her last known location was somewhere near a Waffle House or a portal. 83. A Kentucky man demanded to be buried vertically in his front lawn, dressed in full Revolutionary War garb and clutching a flintlock musket, facing northeast toward Washington, D.C., because, in his words, "The feds need to remember I'm still watching, even from below." The funeral included cannon fire, live bald eagles, and a preacher who opened with, "We are gathered here to honor a man who never paid parking tickets." 84. In the foothills of Colorado, a man went an entire year eating nothing but hot dogs and individually wrapped slices of American cheese as a form of protest against what he called the culinary elitism of kale culture. He tracked his nutrition by throwing darts at a wall labeled protein and declared proudly and slightly bloated that his body was 98% Liberty and sodium. 85. A deeply patriotic father in Texas named his 5 children Freedom, Justice, Don't Tread on Me, Glock Jr., and somehow, just Susan. When asked why Susan didn't get a more symbolic name, he replied, "You gotta keep one kid grounded, in case the others run for office or join a militia." 86. A man in Florida installed a vending machine outside his house that didn't accept coins or bills, only handwritten declarations of independence. To get a soda, people had to pen their own personal revolt against tyranny. It ran out of Mountain Dew in 3 days and collected enough crayon manifestos to start a revolution in a kindergarten. 87. In Wisconsin, a woman refused to pay her taxes unless the IRS addressed her by her self-appointed title, Her Majesty the Duchess of Liberty Pines. She even sent them an envelope sealed with mashed potatoes and glitter, stating that it bore the sacred mark of American nobility. The IRS returned it, twice, with interest. 88. A man in Montana formally seceded from his own family, drafted a 2-page constitution on yellow legal paper, and began charging relatives $5 for entry visas to attend Thanksgiving dinner. When his cousin showed up with store-bought cranberry sauce, he was denied entry under Article 2, No Imported Traditions, for a solid. 89. In a California yoga studio, a group introduced a class called Freedom Flow, where participants performed sun salutations while chanting the Bill of Rights. During one particularly intense pose, a man pulled a hamstring on the phrase, "well-regulated militia," and instead of asking for help, he yelled, "I plead the fifth," and face-planted into the mat. 90. A barefoot advocate in Arkansas publicly declared that socks were a symbol of foot oppression and refused to wear them at any location, including funerals and court appearances. He painted tiny American flags on each toenail and once shouted, "I'd rather get athlete's foot than walk in shame outside a Walmart." 91. In Manhattan, a tech consultant went completely silent in protest of digital surveillance and chose to communicate exclusively in Morse code, tapping out grocery lists, feelings, and even breakups. His wife lasted 6 months before filing for divorce via SOS. 92. A Georgia woman attempted to claim her waffle iron as a dependent on her federal tax return, stating that it provided emotional warmth during a time of national uncertainty. When denied, she filed a lawsuit for culinary neglect, bringing her waffle iron into court as Exhibit A. It was still warm. 93. In rural Washington, a man replaced every light bulb in his house with unscented candles, claiming that Thomas Edison was a deep state psyop. After accidentally setting his kitchen curtains on fire during a midnight snack, he declared, "That's the cost of lighting the path to freedom." 94. In Florida, a man ran for city council on a single-issue platform, legalizing indoor fireworks in laundromats. His campaign video featured slow-motion explosions, shirtless flag waving, and the quote, "Liberty isn't clean until it's loud." He lost the election by 3 votes and several eyebrows. 95. In a sleepy Pennsylvania suburb, a couple declared their hot tub extraterritorial waters and posted signs around their backyard warning the HOA that it was now an independent maritime zone. They appointed their inflatable flamingo as Minister of Leisure and launched nightly diplomatic negotiations over mojitos. 96. A man in Alabama created a dating app called Constitutional Love, where people matched based on their favorite amendments. His profile included big on the 2nd, love long walks through the 4th, open to poly under the 10th. He claimed 18 matches, all bots, probably Russian. 97. In Utah, someone trained a parrot to scream "unfair search" every time someone knocked on the door. Amazon drivers began hurling packages from across the yard, and one even left a note that read, "Tell your bird I know my rights." 98. In Alaska, a man sued the state to declare his backyard an independent nation called Goatopia, complete with its own flag and passport office for pet goats. He charged tourist admission in hay bales, hosted weekly goat parades with miniature tanks made from wheelbarrows, and insisted it was his constitutional republic. 99. In Ohio, a homeowner wrapped his mailbox in 500 feet of barbed wire and labeled it "Zone of Free Expression," saying it was necessary to protect his correspondence from alphabet agencies. The local mail carrier refused to approach, citing unconstitutional tetanus. 100. In Nevada, a suburban resident erected a 30-foot bald eagle statue so enormous it completely blocked their neighbor's sunlight for 9 months. When asked to remove it, the owner simply said, "If freedom casts a shadow, then let the flowers adapt." 101. And finally, in the rugged hills of Maine, a man spent 6 weeks constructing a giant papier-mâché replica of the Liberty Bell, climbed inside it naked, and launched himself downhill yelling, "Let freedom ring!" He broke his leg, dislocated an undisclosed appendage, and upon rescue whispered, "Totally worth it." So yes, that was 101 red-blooded, star-spangled, overcooked examples of how freedom in America isn't just a right. It's an extreme sport. Whether it's a goat with a passport, a sandwich board dual challenge, or a man who thinks deodorant is tyranny, one thing's for sure. In America, if there's a line, someone's already crossed it waving a flag and yelling, "Liberty!" So which one was your favorite? Or better yet, what's the most absurd freedom moment you've ever witnessed? Drop it in the comments. Just don't bring a raccoon as emotional support.